Welcome to another AI pattern recognition deep dive.
Today, we are tackling a problem that, well, it's been around pretty much forever, since humans started building complex societies, really. It's the problem of coordination at scale.
Right. Individually, people can be brilliant, but getting groups to work together effectively, especially large groups, that's often where things fall apart.
Exactly. So we're diving deep into a proposed solution, a framework based purely on pattern recognition. It's called TeamWorks-AI, or TMW-AI for short.
And the key thing here, the really crucial difference, is that TMW-AI isn't about automating individual tasks, not like the AI you might use to write code or predict stocks.
Okay, so it's not like Mimic AI or MCAI, as the sources call them. Those focus on replicating what one person does.
Precisely. TMW-AI completely ignores the individual level, in a way. Its entire focus is on the collective. How do groups coordinate? How do they cooperate or fail to? How do they achieve shared goals?
So it sees the team, or even the whole society, as almost like a single system, a machine to be analyzed.
That's a good way to put it. It's looking for the patterns in that collective machine, the communication flows, the decision processes, the trust dynamics, and then, importantly, it's designed to intervene to make that machine run better.
It's like an operating system upgrade for the group, not the individual computer. And the reason for building something this, well, ambitious,
Yeah.
the sources argue it's pretty urgent.
It is. I mean, look at the big challenges we're facing. Climate change, pandemics, economic instability, conflict, managing resources.
All huge global problems.
That's the core claim, using pattern recognition to solve the coordination gap that has, frankly, limited human progress for centuries.
It's a massive claim.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to really get into the nuts and bolts. How does the system actually work? We need to look at it across different scales.
Right. We'll start small at the micro level, like fixing a struggling software team. Then we'll move up to the meso level, organizations and communities. And finally, the macro level things like disaster response and even global climate agreements. Okay, let's jump in. Section 1. Micro level dynamics. How does TMW-AI optimize the small team? So when TMW-AI looks at a small team, it doesn't really care about, say, the code they're writing initially. It goes straight for the team's communication architecture. It treats it like a network.
Debugging the team's network.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It monitors a few key things. First, information flow, who talks to whom, how often, who initiates. Second, listening quality, are people actually absorbing what others say? Third, feedback loops, is information cycling back effectively? And fourth, signal versus noise.
Signal versus noise, meaning like cutting through the clutter. Identifying barriers.
Precisely. Barriers like hierarchy, maybe language differences, cultural misunderstandings, even just poorly structured meetings. It's trying to find what's blocking effective information exchange.
Okay, you mentioned listening quality. That sounds subjective. How does an AI measure something like listening?
That's where it gets clever. It uses several indicators. In virtual settings, for example, it looks at response latency. How quickly does someone respond after another person finishes speaking? Long delays might suggest distraction.
Right, makes sense.
It also uses NLP, natural language processing. Does the response actually build on the previous point? Does it use phrases like, so building on what you said, or if I understand correctly? Or does it just pivot immediately to something else?
So it's tracking those connecting phrases, the acknowledgments.
Yes. High frequency of those reflective or summarizing phrases correlates strongly with what humans perceive as good listening. A lack of them gets flagged. It turns conversational cues into data points. Interesting. Okay, let's make this concrete. The case study. A software team. 8 developers, 1 PM, globally distributed, and they're struggling. Scoring 52 out of 100 on effectiveness. Yeah, a classic scenario. The TMW-AI analysis over 3 months found some really common but damaging patterns. The senior developer, Alex, technically strong, but maybe not the best communicator, was responsible for 68% of all speaking time in meetings.
68%. Wow.
Yeah, and the direct consequence. Maya, a junior developer who, it turned out, often had really insightful solutions, spoke only 4% of the time.
And her silence wasn't just random shyness.
No, the system linked it directly to project outcomes. 73% of the critical bugs that made it into production originated in code modules where the communication patterns were minimal or heavily skewed, just like in those meetings dominated by Alex. Her silence was creating technical debt.
I think everyone listening can picture that dynamic. But you mentioned it was global time zones played a role, too.
A huge role. The AI flagged it immediately. Team members in the Asia-Pacific region, they were effectively excluded from about 80% of the real-time decision-making discussions simply because of timing.
Ouch. And that had measurable effects.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a hard data point in the sources. The quality of their code reviews was 45% lower when they had to do them late at night or early in the morning outside their normal working hours. It wasn't about skill, it was fatigue caused by a bad coordination pattern. So the fix couldn't just be telling Alex to talk less, it had to be structural. What did TMW-AI recommend?
The interventions were very specific, very process-oriented. First, they put in a mandatory turn-taking protocol in meetings. Simple, but it broke Alex's dominance and forced contributions from quieter members like Maya.
Okay, what else? Second, they rotated meeting times systematically over a 6-week cycle. This guaranteed that the Asia-Pacific members got a fair share of meetings during their peak working hours. Third, a big one. All key decisions now required asynchronous documentation and sign-off before being finalized. That took the pressure off being present at inconvenient times. And what about Maya specifically?
Ah, yes. The system suggested intentionally pairing Maya with Alex on certain tasks, not just for mentoring, but positioning her as a necessary communication bridge or technical clarifier for some of Alex's complex ideas. It structurally embedded her voice into the workflow.
It really does sound like engineering the conversation. What happened? Did it work?
The results were pretty dramatic. Within 2 months, Maya's participation shot up to 18%. And with her voice being heard, she identified a core architectural flaw that had been causing problems for ages. The overall bug rate dropped by 41%, which correlated strongly with the improved communication balance. The team's effectiveness score jumped from that initial 52 up to 76. And crucially, they delivered their project on time the first time in 18 months.
So TMW-AI didn't teach them to code better. It fixed the way they talk to each other.
It optimized their collaboration network. That's the core idea.
Okay, moving beyond just communication flow, the next micro-level aspect is role distribution. TMW-AI seems to argue that formal job titles often don't reflect how work actually gets done.
Exactly. It looks past the org chart to identify 8 critical functional roles that need to be filled for a team to be truly effective. Someone has to be doing these jobs regardless of title.
And what are these 8 roles?
Okay, so there's the leader, who could be formal or informal, but they drive decisions. The innovator, generating new ideas. The implementer, who translates those ideas into action. The connector, bridging gaps inside the team and with external groups. Then, the quality controller, focused on standards, catching errors. The harmonizer, who manages team tension and morale. And, often overlooked but vital, the devil's advocate, the one who challenges assumptions and prevents groupthink. Oh, and I missed one. The resource investigator, who brings in external info and opportunities. That's 8.
8 functional roles. And if one is missing,
the team will likely struggle in that specific area. If there's no devil's advocate, they might charge ahead with a bad idea. No connector. They become isolated.
let's apply this. The case study is a hospital emergency department 24 staff, high pressure, observed for 6 months. Dr. Chen is the official boss.
Right, Dr. Chen has the title. But TMW-AI's analysis showed the real operational structure was quite different. Nurse Rodriguez, for instance, was identified as the informal coordination hub, meaning 89% of the staff, doctors, technicians, other nurses consulted her first for procedural questions, resource issues, basically figuring out how things should run smoothly day to day. She was the operational linchpin.
Interesting. And leadership wasn't static either.
No. The AI detected a dynamic pattern. During high-stress trauma situations, Dr. Patel consistently emerged as the de facto crisis leader. He made the critical calls, coordinated actions rapidly, and the data showed patient outcomes were measurably better when he took charge in those moments.
And then there was Technician James, the morale keeper. How does an AI measure morale keeping?
It wasn't just subjective observation. It correlated his presence with other data. The system monitored staff stress indicators, maybe self-reported, maybe biofeedback depending on the setup, and found that overall stress levels dropped by a quantifiable 30% when James was on shift.
30%, just by him being there.
Apparently his demeanor, maybe humor, his way of interacting, acted as a measurable buffer against stress. And at the same time, Nurse Thompson was identified as the natural quality controller. Her meticulous approach meant she caught 76% of all potential medication or procedural errors flagged during the observation period.
So the system found these hidden strengths, these functional roles being filled by people without the formal title. But what was the gap? What was the ED missing?
They were missing the systems improvement role. Essentially, the innovator, combined with the implementer, focused on long-term fixes. Everyone was so busy putting out fires, which they were good at, thanks to Patel and Rodriguez and Thompson, that nobody had the bandwidth or the designated role to step back and ask, how do we prevent these fires from starting in the first place?
Right, the constant firefighting trap. So the recommendations involved making these informal roles more formal.
Essentially, yes. Recognizing and supporting Rodriguez's coordination function, providing leadership training for Patel to solidify his crisis management skills, and critically, creating a new dedicated position focused solely on continuous improvement to fill that systems gap.
And leveraging James's morale skills.
Yes, they trained him in specific stress management techniques so he could actively teach others, amplifying his natural talent across the team. The results were pretty staggering. Patient outcomes up 23%, staff burnout down 34%, medical errors cut by more than half, 52%. But I wonder, did Dr. Chen, the formal leader, push back when the AI basically said, hey, Nurse Rodriguez is the real coordinator here? That's always the potential friction point with these systems' human acceptance. The sources suggest it was managed because the feedback wasn't personal criticism. TMW-AI presented objective data. Consultations with Nurse Rodriguez correlate with an X% faster resolution time. It wasn't saying Chen was bad. It was showing Rodriguez's function was critical. The data depersonalized it. Makes sense. Data makes it less about ego. This leads nicely into the third micro-level pattern, decision-making. This is where TMW-AI looks for biases, groupthink, things like that. It's not just about the final decision, but the process of getting there. Is it dominated by one person? Is consensus genuine or forced? Are they trading off speed and accuracy effectively? It's scanning for those cognitive traps.
The example is a corporate board, high stakes, a $500 million investment decision. You'd think these experienced people would be immune, but the AI found issues even before the meeting started.
It found a classic anchoring bias tied to hierarchy. When the CEO strongly pushed for a specific investment, the board approved it 83% of the time. But when the CEO presented options neutrally, the approval rate dropped to 45%.
So the CEO's initial stance was basically deciding the outcome most of the time.
It was acting as a powerful anchor, pulling everyone else's judgment along with it, sometimes irrespective of the underlying data.
Yeah, and we see that silent expert problem again. Board member Chen, the one with the best tech investment track record, barely spoke.
Right. TMW-AI analyzed the patterns and suggested it was partly cultural, partly structural. By the time the discussion got around to Chen in their usual meeting format, a strong consensus had often already formed, making it much harder, socially, to dissent or raise complex objections.
And there were conflicts of interest, too.
The AI flagged 3 members who had financial ties, not necessarily illegal, but significant to the technology sector being discussed. TMW-AI didn't allege bad intent, but flagged it as a high risk for unconscious confirmation bias. They had a built-in reason to want the investment to look good.
So the intervention had to really shake up their usual process. How did TMW-AI do that in such a formal setting?
It mandated several process changes. First, a mandatory anonymous pre-vote before any open discussion and before the CEO stated a strong preference. This was designed to get a read on genuine initial opinions, free from the anchor.
Smart. What else?
Second, the meeting facilitator was explicitly tasked with ensuring Chen spoke early, getting his expert view on the table before the social tide turned. Third, it highlighted the potential conflicts of interest, not accusingly, but as a factor for everyone to consciously consider. And fourth, it suggested a red team blue team debate format.
Forcing them to argue against the investment.
Exactly. Making it someone's job to find the flaws, to argue why this $500 million could be lost. It legitimizes dissent.
And the anonymous pre-vote immediately showed the problem. It wasn't 80% approval, it was 50-50.
That was the jolt they needed. It broke the illusion of consensus. Empowered by the split vote and the structure, Chen raised critical technical flags. The red team presented compelling risks. The board paused.
Delayed the decision. Delayed it by a month for more due diligence. And that deeper dive confirmed Chen's fears. The technology wasn't ready for commercial scale-up. TMW-AI's process intervention, by revealing the hidden dissent and forcing a critical look, saved the company an estimated $350 million loss. It protected them from their own biases. That board example really highlights how crucial the human element is. Technicals don't matter if the group dynamics are broken. Which brings us to Section 2. Trust, diversity, and conflict. Let's start with trust. TMW-AI has this interesting four-dimensional model. It's not just, do I trust you? It's how.
Right. It argues trust isn't monolithic. It's layered and domain-specific. You have to build it step by step. The first layer is competence trust. Basically, can you actually do your job well? It's about proven skill.
Okay, competence first. Makes sense.
Second is reliability trust. Will you do what you say will do? This is about consistency, follow-through, predictability. Can I count on you?
Competence, then reliability. Third.
Third is integrity trust. Will you do the right thing ethically? This involves honesty, transparency, shared values. A big part of this is admitting mistakes openly.
And the final layer.
The top layer is benevolence trust. Do you actually care about my well-being and the team's? This is about empathy, support, vulnerability. Knowing someone has your back, even when it's inconvenient for them. TMW-AI suggests you need all four for robust, resilient team trust. Okay, the case study. Merging two former competitor companies, Alpha and Beta, into a new venture. Starting point is basically zero trust, maybe even negative trust. TMW-AI used a 20-week protocol to build these layers. Yeah, they couldn't just force it. Phase 1, weeks 1 to 5, was laser-focused on competence trust. They didn't do trust falls. They paired Alpha and Beta members on specific, small, but visible tasks that required showcasing their individual expertise. The goal makes everyone see, okay, the enemy actually knows their stuff.
Building respect for capability first. Then phase 2, week 6-10, moves to reliability. How did they build that? Through small, public commitments. If an Alpha member promised a report by Wednesday and delivered, that was explicitly acknowledged by the team lead. It built a track record piece by piece. The message becomes, they follow through. Yeah. Okay, phase 3, integrity trust, weeks 11-15. This feels trickier. You can't just mandate honesty.
No, but you can mandate transparent processes. Key decisions required documented rationale, and they implemented a mistake protocol. If someone owned up to a non-catastrophic error quickly and transparently, they were praised for the integrity, not punished for the mistake. This built psychological safety.
Shifting the focus from blame to learning. And the final phase, benevolence trust, week 16-20.
This was about demonstrating care. It involved structured sessions for sharing professional challenges, not deep personal therapy, but showing vulnerability. And crucially, a protocol where team members were expected to publicly defend a colleague if they were being unfairly criticized by an outsider. Little acts that signal, we're in this together.
And the result? Team effectiveness jumped from a low 31 to 82 out of 100 in 5 months. But TMW-AI also watches for things that destroy trust, right? These trust destruction warnings.
Absolutely. It's constantly scanning for patterns known to corrode trust, especially integrity and benevolence. Things like hidden agendas, someone consistently twisting data to support their pet project.
Okay, what else?
Inconsistent treatment, a leader holding different people to different standards. Taking credit for other people's work, a classic trust killer. And overpromising and underdelivering, which destroys reliability. If these patterns spike, TMW-AI alerts leadership because they're like termites in the foundation of trust.
Got it. Now, let's talk diversity and inclusion. The sources mention the diversity paradox. Diverse teams should be better, but often aren't initially. Why?
The paradox is that diversity brings cognitive riches, different perspectives, ideas, problem-solving approaches. But it also brings complexity, different communication styles, cultural norms, ways of handling conflict. Without intentional management, that complexity leads to friction, misunderstandings, fragmentation, or the loudest voices drowning out others.
So diversity is potential, but inclusion is how you unlock it?
Exactly. The case study is an innovation team at a tech company, people from the US, Japan, India, Nigeria, highly talented individuals, but their initial performance was poor, only 48 out of 100.
What was the pattern TMW-AI found?
A real clash of styles.
Yeah.
The American engineers used to direct debate-heavy communication, took up 75% of the airtime. The Japanese member, valuing harmony and consensus, often waited too long to speak or didn't speak at all.
Okay.
Suggestions from the Indian members, often phrased more indirectly, were misinterpreted as lacking confidence. And the Nigerian designers' highly creative, maybe less conventional ideas were often shot down early as impractical by the dominant, more linear-thinking group members.
So the potential was there, but the interaction patterns were blocking it. The intervention involved cultural intelligence training.
Yes, but very practical training. Not just abstract theories. It focused on decoding specific behaviors. Like explaining to the Americans that Japanese silence often means deep thought, not disagreement. Explaining to others that American directness in critique is usually about the task, not a personal attack. Bridging those perception gaps.
And then they changed the rules of the game. the processes.
Crucially, yes, they mandated written idea submission before meetings, putting all ideas on an equal footing initially. They used structured turn-taking, so everyone had a chance to speak, and they implemented an idea-building rule.
Idea building.
Before you could critique someone's idea, you had to first state one way to build on it, one potential positive aspect or extension. This forced engagement and prevented knee-jerk dismissals.
That's clever. And the results. Performance soared to 89 out of 100. Contributions became much more balanced. And here's the kicker. They filed 5 patent applications that year. The company average was less than 1. It proved that diversity, when actively managed for inclusion, becomes a massive innovation engine. Okay, final human factor. Conflict patterns. TMW-AI distinguishes between good and bad conflict.
Right. There's healthy conflict, which is task-focused. Disagreeing about ideas, challenging data, pushing for better solutions. It can be really energizing and productive. Then there's unhealthy conflict, which is relationship-focused. Personal attacks, blame, defensiveness, sarcasm. That stuff is toxic and drains energy.
How does the AI tell the difference? Especially that tipping point where healthy debate turns sour?
It looks for specific linguistic and behavioral markers. Using NLP, it tracks pronoun shifts from "we need to examine the data" to "you aren't thinking clearly." It looks for accusatory language, dismissive tones. In video, it might track changes in facial expressions, increased vocal tension, interruptions becoming aggressive rather than collaborative, or people suddenly withdrawing. It's looking for the shift from issue to person, the case study. A research lab. 2 senior researchers, Adams and Brooks. They start with a valid scientific disagreement. Yes, a legitimate debate about methodology. But over a few months, TMW-AI tracked the language degenerating. Your method has limitations became, your thinking is flawed.
Yeah.
Productivity started dipping. The AI matched this pattern progression to its database it was tracking towards team implosion, similar to 73% of comparable cases it had analyzed.
So it flagged this brewing crisis. What was the intervention?
An immediate private alert went to the lab director. The AI didn't suggest therapy, but a structured intervention focused on reframing the conflict. Get them off who's right and onto what approach does the evidence suggest is best for this problem.
And how did they do that practically? TMW-AI recommended a specific objective test. Run a small pilot study using both Adams's method and Brooks's method on the same subset of data. Let the results speak.
Forcing the conflict back onto the data, off the personality.
Exactly. And the pilot revealed something interesting. The methods weren't competing. They were complementary. Adams's was better for initial screening. Brooks's was better for in-depth analysis. So combining them was the answer.
Yes. The combined approach yielded superior results, led to a significant publication, and completely diffused the personal animosity. TMW-AI helped turn destructive conflict into a constructive synthesis by changing the framework of the debate. All right, let's scale up. We're moving from small teams to the meso level. Entire organizations, communities. TMW-AI's focus here shifts to learning patterns. How does an organization learn or fail to learn collectively? It starts by identifying the patterns common to successful learning organizations. TMW-AI highlights 5 key ones. First, psychological safety, probably the most critical. People feel safe to speak up, admit mistakes, ask questions without fear of punishment or humiliation.
Okay, safety first. What else?
Second, knowledge capture. Effective systems, formal or informal, for actually documenting and sharing what people learn. Lessons aren't lost when someone leaves. Third, cross-pollination mechanisms for ideas and insights to travel sideways across different departments or silos.
Breaking down those walls.
Exactly. Fourth, experimentation. A culture that encourages trying new things, even if some fail, as long as the learning is captured. And fifth, reflection time. Deliberately building in time for teams and the organization to pause, analyze performance, and figure out how to improve, not just rushing to the next fire.
And the flip side, the patterns of organizations that don't learn well.
They're almost mirror images. First, blame culture. Mistakes are punished, so people hide them. Problems fester. Second, knowledge silos. Information is hoarded, departments compete instead of collaborating. Not invented here. Syndrome is rampant. Third, rigid processes. This is how we've always done it. Resistance to any change, even beneficial change. Fourth, no failure tolerance. If any failure is career limiting, nobody takes risks, innovation dies. And fifth, constant firefighting. Everyone's too busy dealing with immediate crises to ever think strategically or fix underlying problems. The case study. A big manufacturing company, 5,000 people, 8 factories. Declining quality, stagnant innovation. They sound like they had all 5 negative patterns. They pretty much did. TMW-AI's analysis found concrete examples. A quality issue solved brilliantly in Factory A. That solution almost never made it to Factory B or C. The same problem would just pop up again elsewhere, months later. Wasteful.
And mistakes were hidden.
Yes, because mistakes led to blame. So workers learned to cover up small issues, which sometimes snowballed into major production failures. And their official suggestion box for innovation. Utterly useless. Good ideas went in, nothing came out.
So the fix wasn't just tweaking a process here or there, it was redesigning their whole learning system.
A fundamental overhaul. First, they tackled the silos with a cross-factory learning network. This involved regular virtual meetings between similar teams in different factories, plus a searchable database for sharing solutions and lessons learned. They even had a Problem of the Month challenge to encourage collaboration.
Okay, that helps knowledge flow. What about the blame culture?
They replaced blame-focused incident reviews with learning reviews. Mandatory process, but the only goal was identifying systemic causes and lessons learned. Zero focus on individual fault. This built psychological safety.
And how did they encourage experimentation and tap into those ignored suggestions?
With an innovation pipeline, every employee's suggestion got a response within a week. Promising ideas got small amounts of seed funding, like $500 to $5,000, and support for quick pilot tests. It made innovation low risk and accessible. They also used TMW-AI to identify retiring experts and systematically capture their crucial tacit knowledge before they left.
18 months later, what changed?
The metrics shifted dramatically. Quality defects down 56%, production efficiency up 28%. And employee suggestions went from maybe 50 a year to over 1,200. The company became profitable again. TMW-AI helped them rewire themselves to actually use their collective brain power.
Beyond corporations, TMW-AI principles were applied to collaborative learning and education. The medical school example is fascinating because doctors are often trained as individuals, but practice demands teamwork.
That's the core challenge. Medical training can be very competitive, very individualistic, but in a real trauma bay, teamwork and communication are literally life and death. So they use TMW-AI during complex trauma simulations.
What was it monitoring in those simulations?
Real-time team dynamics under pressure. Communication clarity was information acknowledged. Role clarity, did someone clearly take the lead? Task prioritization, were they addressing the most critical issues first? Stress management cues, error detection rates, the whole collaborative process.
And the first simulation, week 1, the score was a dismal 35 out of 100. What did that look like?
Chaos, basically. Communication breakdowns everywhere. Someone would call out a critical vital sign, like a dangerously low blood pressure, but nobody would verbally confirm they heard it or were acting on it. Information vanished into the stress.
Role confusion, too.
Big time. You might have 3 people trying to start an IV line while nobody was managing the patient's airway, the most critical, immediate need. The simulation showed that 2 out of the 3 patients died not because of lack of medical knowledge, but because of coordination failure.
So the coaching had to target those specific failures.
Exactly. TMW-AI allowed for highly targeted feedback using video playback. See here, Sarah announced the BP, listen, no response. That information was lost. Then they'd recommend specific protocols like closed-loop communication.
Mandating confirmation like reading BP 6040, copy 6040, starting fluids now.
Precisely. Simple, but ensures the loop is closed. The training scenarios also got progressively harder over 12 weeks, deliberately stressing different collaborative skills, handling disagreements under pressure, delegating effectively, coordinating with other teams like surgery.
And by the end, week 12, the score was up to 87 out of 100. The simulated patients survived. But does this translate to the real world?
That's the crucial validation. The source material reports that graduates who went through this TMW-AI-enhanced team training showed a 32% improvement in key positive patient outcome metrics during their first year of residency compared to graduates from the old individual-focused curriculum.
32% is significant. It suggests these coordination skills are teachable and have real impact.
It really reinforces the idea that collaboration isn't just a soft skill. It's a core competency that can be systematically analyzed, taught, and improved, just like any technical skill. Okay, now we're really scaling up. Section 4, macro-level coordination. Applying TMW-AI to huge complex challenges like disaster response and global cooperation. Let's start with disasters. The typical pattern after a major hurricane or earthquake is, well, often chaotic. It is. You get dozens, sometimes hundreds of organizations rushing in, government agencies, NGOs, volunteer groups, all with good intentions, but often working in silos. This leads to duplicated efforts in some areas and massive gaps in others. Resources get wasted, and help doesn't get where it's needed most, fast enough.
A classic coordination failure. So how does TeamWorks-AI try to impose order on that chaos? The Hurricane Zeta scenario from 2029 is the example.
TMW-AI was activated 48 hours before landfall. Its first job was rapid organizational mapping. It identified 47 different organizations planning to respond, ingested data on their capabilities, resources, communication methods.
Did it force them into one single command structure?
Not exactly. It respected their autonomy but created a unified coordination layer on top. It assigned clear geographic zones of responsibility, established common communication protocols, and required real-time reporting of actions and resource deployment into a shared platform. It provided the connective tissue.
And it went beyond just reacting, it was predictive.
Yes. By integrating weather models, infrastructure data, demographic information, it predicted where the greatest needs would likely emerge after the storm passed. It specifically flagged zones X, Y, and Z as high risk due to factors like concentrations of elderly populations or fragile infrastructure.
Allowing prepositioning of resources.
Exactly. Specialized medical teams, water purification units, temporary shelters, they were moved close to those predicted hotspots before the hurricane hit, saving critical time afterwards.
What about volunteers? Disasters often see a huge, sometimes overwhelming influx of people wanting to help.
Managing that influx is key. TMW-AI treated the 12,000 registered volunteers as a skills database. It rapidly matched volunteers' verified skills, medical, construction, logistics, languages to the specific needs emerging in different zones, deploying them in coordinated teams with clear tasks. This avoided the usual problem of well-meaning but unmanaged volunteers sometimes getting in the way.
The results compared to similar past hurricanes are striking. 40% faster response time, 87% fewer coverage gaps, 64% less resource waste, and estimated 1,200 lives saved. Those are incredible numbers. But bringing 47 independent organizations under an AI-driven coordination system was their pushback.
Friction. The sources do mention initial friction, yes, particularly around data sharing protocols and perceived threats to organizational autonomy or traditional hierarchies. We don't report to them, that kind of thing.
How was that overcome? Primarily through demonstrating immediate, undeniable value with objective data. TeamWorks-AI could show, in near real time, Organization A's delay in sharing transport data is directly causing a 2-hour delay in aid reaching Zone Y, where critical needs are unmet. When organizations saw the direct link between coordination and faster, better outcomes, lives saved, suffering reduced, the resistance tended to diminish. The shared mission objective, backed by transparent data, trumped organizational inertia. Okay, if disaster response is a short, intense sprint, then global climate action. That's the ultimate coordination marathon. Hundreds of nations, deep conflicts of interest, the long-term versus short-term problem. It's arguably the hardest coordination problem humanity faces. TMW-AI analysis points to 2 core patterns that need solving. The free rider problem, where countries benefit from others' emission cuts without contributing fairly themselves, and the tragedy of the commons, where everyone acting in their own rational short-term interest degrades the shared resource, the atmosphere.
Plus, the political cycle problem. Politicians are incentivized by the next election, which is usually 2-4 years away. Climate action requires consistent effort over decades. The timelines are fundamentally mismatched.
So TMW-AI's role here is as a planetary scale monitoring and coordination system. What's it tracking?
It's integrating multiple, previously fragmented data streams. High-resolution, independently verified emissions data, no more relying solely on self-reporting. Real-time tracking of climate finance flows and technology transfers. Progress monitoring, comparing actual actions against national pledges. Detailed modeling of climate impact distribution showing who is suffering the most disproportionately. And even sentiment analysis of political and corporate statements to gauge actual commitment versus rhetoric.
Creating an undeniable, globally transparent ledger of who is doing what. How does it use this data to drive coordination? The first mechanism is transparent accountability.
This is about making everything visible. A public, constantly updated dashboard showing every country's performance against their commitments, verified by the system. No hiding, no fudging the numbers, no delaying reports. This creates intense diplomatic and public pressure on laggards. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The second mechanism, fair burden sharing. This sounds politically explosive. How does an AI determine what's fair for 195 nations? It aims to replace political horse trading with objective calculation. TMW-AI calculates a fair share based on a weighted formula considering three main factors: historical emissions, who caused the problem; current capabilities, who has the economic and technological capacity to act now; and vulnerability to impacts, who is suffering the most and needs the most support.
So it generates differentiated responsibilities based on data, not just negotiation power.
Exactly. The goal is to create targets that have objective legitimacy, shifting the argument away from pure politics. The third mechanism, incentive alignment, tackles the free rider problem head-on.
How does it make cooperation the economically rational choice?
Several ways. It acts as a trusted broker for technology transfer, identifying successful green tech deployments in one place and facilitating their adoption elsewhere, backed by verified performance data to reduce investment risk. It also helps design international agreements, where compliance is linked to tangible benefits like preferential trade access, and non-compliance carries real economic consequences, detected automatically by the monitoring system. It aligns national self-interest with the global collective good.
The timeline in the source material suggests TMW-AI's transparency system goes fully online around 2030. When does it predict a tipping point for action?
The modeling suggests a potential tipping point around 2035. By then, the combination of transparency pressure, fair targets, and accelerated green tech deployment, driven partly by TMW-AI, reducing investment risk, makes renewables economically superior to fossil fuels in a large majority of global markets.
So economics starts driving the transition faster than politics alone.
That's the idea. Once it's cheaper to go green, the transition accelerates rapidly. By 2035, the model predicts about 80% of countries are meeting or exceeding their climate targets, driven by this mix of pressure and economic self-interest. The remaining 20% face significant isolation. The key is that TMW-AI makes cooperation tangible, verifiable, and ultimately more beneficial than going it alone.
All right, our final section brings TMW-AI into the realms of economics and politics, arguably the most complex human systems to coordinate. Let's start with economic cooperation. TMW-AI's analysis seems critical of both pure free markets and pure central planning.
That's right. It identifies coordination failures in both extremes. Unfettered markets are great at innovation and efficiency for private goods, but they systematically underprovide public goods like clean air, infrastructure, basic research, and can lead to massive inequality and instability.
And planned economies.
They fail because of the sheer complexity. A central planner simply cannot have enough information to efficiently allocate resources and set prices for millions of goods and services in a modern economy. This leads to shortages, surpluses, and general inefficiency.
So TMW-AI advocates for a hybrid.
Exactly. A model that uses markets for most things, where price signals work well, but employs deliberate, intelligent coordination for public goods, social safety nets, environmental protection, and crucial long-term investments like education and R&D. It's about finding the right coordination mechanism for each type of problem. The case study: regional economic development. A struggling Rust Belt city, high unemployment. TMW-AI helped devise a coordination strategy where traditional methods failed. The first step was pattern recognition on a regional scale. TMW-AI's analysis identified overlooked assets: a workforce with dormant high-precision manufacturing skills and underutilized industrial infrastructure. Then it mapped regional needs.
And found a mismatch.
It found a huge unmet demand for specialized medical devices from a major healthcare cluster just 100 miles away. The skills needed there closely matched the dormant skills in the struggling city. The supply and demand existed, but the bridge between them didn't. Plus, there was a kind of psychological barrier, a lack of confidence and entrepreneurial spirit after years of decline.
So the strategy had to address both the logistical and psychological gaps. It had 5 points. First,
Asset mapping and needs alignment. Explicitly identifying which local skills transferred directly to medical device manufacturing. Second, coordinated training. This wasn't just generic job training. They partnered local colleges directly with the medical device companies and the healthcare system, designing curricula to meet the exact skills needed, and crucially, guaranteeing jobs for the first 800 workers retrained. That built confidence.
okay, skills and jobs aligned. What about the barrier for new small businesses? Medical devices require expensive equipment. That was point 3. Infrastructure coordination. TMW-AI helped orchestrate the creation of a shared advanced manufacturing facility like an industrial co-op equipped with the specialized machinery needed. Multiple small startups could access this facility, sharing costs and resources. Smart. Point 4 dealt with financing. banks are wary of declining regions.
Yes, financial coordination. Instead of banks evaluating each tiny startup individually, TMW-AI helps structure a portfolio lending approach. Lenders provided capital to the network of businesses, secured against the guaranteed demand from the healthcare hub and the shared infrastructure. This spread the risk and unlocked capital.
And the fifth point, the psychological one.
Psychological momentum. They made a huge effort to publicize every single early success, the first 50 jobs created, the first company launched from the co-op, building belief that the turnaround was real.
And the results over 5 years.
Pretty transformative. Unemployment dropped from 15% down to 6%. Average wages rose significantly by 34%. The city stopped losing population. Its whole identity began to shift towards being an advanced manufacturing hub. TMW-AI provided the orchestration needed to connect the dots and unlock the latent potential.
Finally, political coordination. Using TMW-AI to enhance democracy itself. This feels ambitious, maybe even controversial. What are the patterns of democratic dysfunction it tries to address? It starts by cataloging the common failure modes we see today. Extreme polarization, where groups can't even agree on basic facts, the rapid spread of misinformation and disinformation, political short-termism driven by election cycles, the outsized influence of special interests and lobbying, and just the overwhelming complexity of the issues citizens are asked to weigh in on. The case study is a city using participatory budgeting, letting residents decide how to spend a slice of the city budget, here $50 million. These programs often sound good, but struggle in practice.
They often do. Low participation, the process gets dominated by the loudest or best organized groups, people get overwhelmed by complexity, and the final decisions don't feel legitimate to the wider population. TMW-AI was used to structure a 5-phase enhanced process. Okay, phase 1, idea generation. They used an open digital platform, got almost 3,000 proposals from residents. TMW-AI didn't just list them, it used NLP and clustering algorithms to analyze them for thematic overlap, feasibility, and underlying intent, synthesizing that huge list down into 127 distinct, well-defined potential projects. Step 1. Manage complexity.
Deliberation. This is often where things fall apart. How did TMW-AI manage this?
It used a technique called stratified random sampling to select a representative group of 5,000 residents for deliberation like a mini public. Then, within online or in-person discussion groups, TMW-AI provided tools for structured dialogue. It monitored speaking time to prevent domination by vocal minorities, prompted facilitators if participation was uneven, and crucially, used NLP to highlight areas of emerging consensus or common ground, helping groups build agreement rather than just focus on differences. So it facilitated finding agreement. Phase 3, refinement. This introduced trade-offs, yes.
Wow.
This phase moved from brainstorming to budgeting. TMW-AI provided clear cost-benefit summaries for the projects and forced participants to confront scarcity. Interactive tools showed things like funding the new community center means you cannot afford the road repairs and the library expansion, which is the priority. It forced realistic choices.
Phase 4 was the actual vote.
Yes, open to all residents, using ranked choice voting to better reflect preferences and encourage broader consensus winners. But importantly, before the vote, TMW-AI generated personalized information summaries for residents, explaining how the top proposed projects might specifically impact their neighborhood or circumstances, aiming for a more informed electorate.
And Phase 5, close the loop.
Implementation and feedback. TMW-AI tracked the progress of the funded projects and, critically, monitored whether they delivered the promised outcomes and benefits. This data was fed back into the next budget cycle, building accountability and trust over time. The result was significantly higher resident satisfaction and perceived legitimacy compared to the old process. Hashtag check outro.
Wow. So reflecting on this deep dive, the scope of this TMW-AI framework is, well, it's vast. We went from fixing bugs in a small software team all the way to coordinating global climate action and revitalizing regional economies.
It really spans the full spectrum of human cooperation. And the underlying thread, the key takeaway from all these examples, seems to be that coordination failure isn't some inevitable part of the human condition. It's often a system design problem.
A measurable, solvable problem.
Exactly. TMW-AI's approach across all scales is fundamentally about making cooperation visible. You can see who's doing what, making it verifiable the data is objective and shared, and ultimately making it more beneficial for the individual or the organization to cooperate than to act alone or defect.
And even without a sophisticated AI, listeners can probably take some of these principles thinking about the 4 dimensions of trust when building a team. actively looking for those hidden functional roles, designing processes to ensure quieter voices are heard, and apply them to improve the collective intelligence in their own work or communities.
Absolutely. These patterns of effective collaboration exist independent of the AI. The AI just makes them easier to see and manage at scale. We started this conversation by framing the core human challenge. We evolved for small tribes, maybe 150 people, but now we live in a way demanding coordination among billions, facing existential threats that require that massive scale of cooperation, the
Right.
gap between our evolved capabilities and our current reality.
So, if a system like TMW-AI, as described in these sources, actually succeeds in bridging that gap, if it allows us to operate as a hyper-efficient, coordinated global collective solving problems like climate change or pandemics, it leads to a really profound, almost philosophical question.
Which is?
To achieve that level of near-perfect coordination, to optimize the collective outcome so effectively, how much of the inherent messiness, the inefficiency, the, frankly, chaotic beauty of individual human complexity and organic political disagreement does the system need to filter out, or maybe even actively suppress?
What gets lost in translation when optimizing for the collective pattern?
Exactly. If TMW-AI delivers a perfectly coordinated surviving humanity, what aspects of our current individual and societal autonomy are we implicit or explicitly trading away to get there? That feels like the critical question we need to grapple with as we think about engineering our collective future.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll see you soon.
This is DigitView.